This week, as our nation celebrates independence and self-determination, may we also hear the religious call to self, to interdependence, and collective action. Those of us who pray to the God of our fathers, those of us who call down the moon, as did our foremothers in Salem and in indigenous villages all over this ancient continent. And those of us who most trust in the scientific method, like our ancestors who experimented with kites and oxygen and forms of government. May we all join our voices and energies into a more perfect union of souls, hearts, brains, and consciences. So may we be, and let us worship together. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join me in singing our opening hymn, Be the Light by Leah Morris. It's a song by Leah, but it was inspired by the poem The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman, which many of you may remember as the poem that was read at Joe Biden's inauguration in 2020. So this is inspired by that. And I'm going to teach that. I'm going to teach it to you. There's 2.5 parts. So the first part goes like this. There is always a light when we are ready to see it. There is always a light when we are ready to be it. So try that with me. There is always a light when we are ready to see it. There is always a light when we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night. Try that. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night. To climb this hill, together we will. Try that with me. To climb this hill, together we will. We'll sing. I'm just going to sing that second part together, all together. So, to see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There is always a light when we are ready to see it. All right, so that's how that part goes. And so that part will just repeat. And then there's a third part, and this essentially this is sung at the same time as There is Always a Light. And it goes like this. It's, shine your light in the darkness. Shine your light in the darkness. One more time. Shine your light in the darkness. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. So that's how we're going to sing it. We're going to sing those first two parts, and then we'll add in the third part. The first and third part will go at the same time, and then we all come together on the second part. Clear? If it's not, don't worry, you'll figure it out. I have faith in you. All right. There is always a light when we are ready to see it. There is always a light when we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. Keep that going. Shine your light in the darkness. Shine your light in the darkness. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There's always a light. There's always a light when we are ready to see it. There is always a light when we are ready to be it, to see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill. Together we will. Pick whichever one you want. Shine your light in the darkness. Shine your light in the darkness. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill. Together we will. All right. And now I invite you to remain risen for our chalice lighting. This morning, our chalice will be lit by Pam Randall, who's a member of our pastoral care team. And this morning, she is lighting the chalice in celebration of 9 years of being clean and sober.
Or not. Here we go, I think.
I'll take it.
Behold the symbol of our faith, fed by differing beliefs, merging together to become one flame, one fine flame burning brightly in beloved community.
And just as a reminder, since this is a relatively new practice, if you have something you would like to celebrate some Sunday, if you have a joy, or maybe it could be a sorrow or a milestone you like to acknowledge, you can always reach out to me or the worship associate if I'm not leading that service. It's been a lovely tradition, which actually Pam was the one who first suggested, so I'm glad that you got to light our chalice this morning. And it's first come, first serve. And now I invite you to join me in saying our covenant words together, first in English and then in Spanish. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship. Thus do we covenant. La doctrina de esta iglesia es el amor. La búsqueda de la verdad es su sacramento y el servicio es su oración. Vivir juntos en paz, buscar el conocimiento en libertad, servir a la humanidad en comunión. Este es nuestro pacto.
Hello. Welcome. I'd like to welcome everyone to Emerson Unitarian. I did this last time too. To Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Jeremy Pace, and my pronouns are he, she, they. I'm happy to serve as your worship associate today. Emerson is a progressive spiritual community with a long history of serving the West Valley. It is a place where we can come together with the goal of living our deepest values, such as justice and inclusion for all, to the greatest extent we can. Together we join as a community here to express what we cannot express alone and to grow only as we can together, which connects with our theme this morning of seeing ourselves not as passive consumers, but as engaged participants who can help shape our neighborhoods, our communities, our country, and our world. This morning, let us remember the land we stand on and live in is from the traditional land of the Tongva, Cheech, and Chumash and Tataviam peoples, past and present. Let us honor the land itself and the people who have stewarded it across generations, that we might learn and become better stewards ourselves. It's good to see those of you who are here in person, And we want to extend a warm welcome to those of us joining us online as well. Please remember to silence your cell phones. And if you're new here, we offer you an especially warm welcome. Please sign the guest book in the foyer or use the link in the chat if you haven't done so already. Everyone is welcome to join us for the first Sunday potluck after the service, which will be in the pavilion through those doors to your right. And for those of you on Zoom, you can stick around for a virtual coffee hour. In a moment, we're going to greet our neighbors. You may also use this time to write a joy, sorrow, or milestone in our book of life right over there. And if you'd like it shared aloud later in the service. Thank you.
Let's now greet our neighbors in the spirit of welcome. So earlier we sang a song inspired by the work, by the poetry of Amanda Gorman. And our story for all ages this morning is based on a different poem of hers. It's called Change Sings, a children's anthem. And so it's by Amanda Gorman and illustrated by Lauren Long. I can hear change humming in its loudest, proudest song. I don't fear change coming, and so I sing along. I scream with the skies of red and blue streamers. I dream with the cries of tried and true dreamers. I'm a chant that rises and rings. there is hope where my change sings. Though some don't understand it, those windmills of mysteries, I sing with all the planet and its hills of histories. I hum with 100 hearts, each of us lifting a hand. I use my strengths and my smarts, take a knee to make a stand. I'm bright as the light each day brings. There is love where my change sings. I show others tolerance, though it might take some courage. I don't make a taller fence, but fight to build a better bridge. I talk not only of distances from where and how we came. I also walk our differences to show we are the same. I'm a movement that roars and springs. There's a wave where my change sings. Change sings where? There, inside me, because I am the change I want to see. As I grow, it grows like seeds. I am just what the world needs. I am the voice where freedom rings. You're the love your bright heart brings. We are the wave starting to spring, for we are the change we sing. We are what the world is becoming, and we know it won't be long. We all hear change strumming. Won't you sing along? I love that story, and it's part of our message of our service together this morning, is how we come together in community to help shape it and create the sort of communities we want to help other people and to work for justice. And we really do that, we can do that best when we do it together. Not only because we can do more because we're more powerful, but also it can just be more fun. So, as you go into your week and we celebrate our Independence Day this Tuesday, I ask you to consider how might you join in that song of singing the change that you wish to see. I now invite you to join me in saying our affirmation. You can do the hand signals, the hand signs along with me if you like. We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands. Each month, we pick a recipient for our Share the Plate, or for our collection, whom we share the plate with throughout the whole month. The month of July, it's the West Valley Food Pantry, which was begun in the mid-1980s. Emerson was actually one of the original congregations that was part of its original founding, and we still have Linda Fitzgerald, who's a member, serves on the board as Emerson's representative. And the West Valley Food Pantry does great work. It serves thousands of people each month, providing them not just free and healthy food, but also other basic necessities. They provide free showers, and they're also in the middle of a significant building campaign. They're adding a new building that would allow them to provide more services for those who most need it, like help finding assistance with housing and finding jobs. And so, as we take up our collection, I invite you to please give generously. If you're donating, if you're writing a check, you can make it out to Emerson UU Church and write share the plate in the memo. And if you're donating online, you can do that via the Breeze CHMS app or at donate.emersonuuc.org, and just select Sunday offering. And now our offering will now be gratefully received.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Each week in our service, we take time to lift up the joys and sorrows from within our community and in the wider world. In our book of life, Lucas writes, celebrating 10 months sober, 6 months in a loving and growing partnership with Jeremy, apartment searching, embracing the next chapter of our lives together. Live to love, love to live. Earlier this week, Louise Rovner's brother Peter passed away. So we ask you to hold him and Louise and her whole family in your hearts. And let me just check our virtual book of life. In our virtual book of life, Joe Cornett writes, today is 3 years since my mom, Fran Turchin, passed away. She was my best friend, and I miss her every day. Now, in a moment, I'm going to sound this singing bowl, and after I do, I invite you to speak into this space or type into the chat if you're online any names or occasions, any joys or sorrows that are on your heart this morning, and that you would like lifted up into this community in this, our embracing meditation.
With me?
all that has been shared, and all that is too tender to be shared yet, and which we hold in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. We offer these into the embrace of this beloved community. This morning we have a special guest, the Reverend Christine Green, who's the Assistant Minister for Congregational Life at the UU Congregation of Fairfax in Virginia, who is also a very good friend of Jeremy's and is out here visiting him in LA this week. And so I knew Kristen was going to be here this morning, but I was looking up UU prayers relating to democracy and justice appropriate for the 4th of July weekend, as well as the Sunday after the Supreme Court has taken away rights for queer people and for people of color, and has burdened those who are already burdened with significant amounts of debt. And I found a prayer that I really loved, and to my surprise, it was by Reverend Kristen. And so I asked if she would be willing to share it this morning.
Thank you. It is a pleasure and an honor to be with you this morning. My name is Reverend Kristen Green. I use she, her pronouns. And I invite you into a time of meditation and prayer. Find your pulse. Find your breath. Find some stillness in this moment. We pray for our country's leaders. May they lead with justice and fairness on their lips. May they hold in highest esteem the value of human life and liberty. May they never forget those who elected them, nor those who did not. Many of us are worried, anxious, afraid. Who will uphold our basic human rights? Who will protect us from rollbacks on liberties? Who will lead us through the shadows? Who will remember us? Spirit of life and love, holy presence all around, embrace us with your wisdom and peace. Surround us with reassurance. Fill our hearts with purpose. Empower us to do what is right. May our hearts be expanded as the time comes for us to comfort one another. May our minds be charged with creativity as we find our way forward. May our bodies be steadfast as we join together to protect the most vulnerable. Each day, liberty is threatened and progress is reversed. May we strive to overwhelm the world with life-giving love. Each moment, human rights and lives are endangered. May we come together bonded by love. Each time devastation hits and hope is scarce, may we rise out of the ashes with dignity and courage as one. May our spirits be guided by our values. May our lives speak, be they gentle and angry or loud and clear. May we remain united in our mission as people of faith to connect deeply, grow together, and serve one another. Blessed be, may it be so, and amen.
I now invite you to join me in singing Circle Round for Freedom.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children, keep the circle whole.
The first thing I want to admit to you all today is that despite being a performer and an absolute extrovert, I have been afraid of becoming a part of a group of people for most of my life. Imagine someone like me, who relies heavily on other people, not wanting to be a part of other people. And I don't even need to do some deep down soul searching to understand why, because people have inspired me, yes. People have healed me, yes. People have listened when I spoke, yes, but people have hurt me. People have voted against me. People have shamed me and belittled me, and it was the pain of other people that gave me a reason to heal, to be strong, and to carry a message in the first place. So I've spent a great deal of my life trying to carry a message to other people, but I've always been weary of joining them. I've been weary of sticking around to even ask, what did you think of what I just said? Because in my mind, they were them, and I had no control over them. And I was the only thing that I could count on or change. But when I examined my role as a citizen, and not the kind of citizen defined by legal status, but the kind that belongs to something, to a community, to a whole, my contribution stopped at being myself, my best self. That's where I started. That's where I stopped. But as I look at what's happening all around us, I realize that my good intentions of minding my own business have me falling into a trap. It's a trap laid out for all of us by some much bigger powers that be, greedy minds that seek to sacrifice people and planet for profit and power, devious minds that seek to divide us so that we're easier to manipulate. All these powers hope that we will stay focused on our own little worlds. They want us isolated. These systems which seek to break us depend upon our rooms being tiny enough for only ourselves, so it becomes my duty to exist outside of just myself. My concept of me will always need to be healthy and strong, yes, but my concept of me was never supposed to negate my understanding of we. Where has my fellowship gone over the years? When did I pack myself so tightly into a room that I erased myself off of a map? It is in sharing our stories and hearing the stories of others that we can understand what our world looks like. And noticing the larger tapestry that we are part of, we can see how our individual thread works to create that bigger picture. And once we see ourselves as a part of that larger picture, that larger story, we understand that we can and must speak as a chorus of voices to defend one another. No matter how we may feel about the people around us or the world at large, we are a part of that world. We must consider the well-being of others in order to truly know what is healthy and safe for ourselves. I must listen to the notes of my fellow singers if I'm ever to be a part of a harmony. And it's scary, like I said, to join them. It's uncomfortable to stand with people who don't know me and with whom I have not yet known and ask that we dare have anything in common at all. But facing those fears has a payoff, globally, domestically, spiritually, and on a daily basis. We all benefit from true fellowship and involvement in our communities. I have my fears of being we, but I've had fears my whole life. And no matter the fear and how big it may seem or may have seemed, standing up to that fear and saying my name, despite my shaking voice, has always worked in my favor. It has saved me time and again, and it has undoubtedly helped another fearful human to hear me stand and be counted. Citizenship is no different. Let us join our community and offer our true selves to the world around us, so that we may be seen, and so that we may invite others to be seen, even if their voice shakes as ours do.
Thank you, Jeremy. So, that's a lot louder. So our next song this morning is "We Shall Be Known" by Carisha Longacre of the duo, folk duo Mom Muse. And we've sung it, I think, once before in church. It was a while ago, back in 2019, and I think we had a recording of it during the Zoom era when all of our music was listening to people sing. And I'm having trouble with this clicker. It's just not responsive enough. So there's just two different parts to the song. And that is there we go. So it goes like this. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. Sing that first part with me. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. Let's sing that one more time. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. You know it. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. Well, we've got it, so let's start back at the beginning. We shall be known by the company we keep. Please rise. By the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. One more time. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Please be seated.
Okay. All right, I have a great reading today. I'm so happy I was able to choose. This is like one of my favorite singers of all time, Ani DeFranco. This is one of my favorite songs by her. It's called Your Next Bold Move. I did augment one of the lines a little bit to reflect global warming. Ani would hate that. If any of you know Ani, please don't tell her. Do me a favor, keep that among us here. So I thought that these lyrics went really well with today's sermon. So this is Your Next Bold Move. Coming of age during the plague of Reagan and Bush, watching capitalism gun down democracy, it had this funny effect on me, I guess. I am cancer, I am HIV, and I'm down at the Blue Jesus Blue Cross Hospital, just looking up from my pillow, feeling blessed. And the mighty multinationals have monopolized the oxygen, so it's as easy as breathing for us all to participate. They're buying and selling off shares of air, and you know it's all around you, but it's hard to point and say there, so you just sit on your hands and quietly contemplate what will be your next bold move, the next thing you're going to need to prove to yourself. And what a waste of thumbs that are opposable to make machines that are disposable, and then sell them to seagulls flying in circles around one big right wing, when the left wing was broken long ago by the slingshot of COINTELPRO, and now it's so hard to have faith in anything, especially your next bold move, the next thing you're going to need to prove to yourself. You want to track each trickle back to its source, and then scream up that faucet until your face is hoarse, because you're surrounded by a world's worth of things you just can't excuse. But you've got the hard cough of a chain smoker, and you're at the Arctic Circle playing strip poker, and it's getting warmer and warmer every time you lose. So go ahead and make your next bold move. Tell us what's the next thing you're going to need to prove to yourself.
A lot of us have grown fearful, angry, cynical about the state of our country now, right? You can hear it in Ani DeFranco's words about how capitalism and corporation and corporatism have weakened this country. And people have lost faith in our institutions, especially our government, and understandably so. Now just look at the past few days and the past few years of the hard right shift of the Supreme Court, which only became so polarized through some of the dirtiest politics this country has ever seen. But it's not just the left that's disillusioned, it's across the political spectrum. And so many, and maybe most people, have narrowed their focus, having lost that faith, have narrowed their focus to just getting their own needs met in a world that seems to be increasingly harsh and unstable day by day. Now, John Alexander, whose work is the major inspiration for this service and is a Reformed ad man, says that most of us are living in what he calls the consumer story. It's a story, he writes, which tells us that we are entitled and passive. We are to be sold to and served. And this consumer story is reinforced by our organizations and institutions, and not just businesses, but our governments and even our nonprofits work in this way. And Alexander says this story has been reinforced so much that it's often mistaken for fundamental human nature. The consumer story has come to feel inevitable, unbreakable, but he says it is not the true story of humanity. It is simply the story of self and society that most of us, almost all of us, have been brought up within. Now, this consumer story is morally justified by the nebulous theory that if each of us pursues what is best for ourselves, then somehow that will result in the best overall, best possible outcome for the whole. Alexander explains that it's a story in which human society is essentially and necessarily a competition, since we, lazy, selfish humans, can be driven to act only by the competitive imperative, which arises from our primal instincts to protect and pass on to our own. And the institution in this story functions, above all, to serve us. That's the purpose of institutions. And we feel entitled, says Alexander, and we believe ourselves self-reliant and independent, the creators of our own destiny, because the consumer is king. And so we believe we are in charge. The consumer is king. And the glittering array of available choices make us forget that there might be possibilities beyond the menu. Intoxicated by the power to choose, we don't realize that the real power itself lies in creating the menu, even deciding whether there is a menu at all. Now, you might be wondering what brought us to this story and why we have bought into it. And to understand why, it's helpful to remember the story that was being told for hundreds and thousands of years before that. Before that, you had what Alexander called the subject story, as in subject of the king. Our role as little people is to be ruled over and kept safe by the hopefully great man in charge, the one ordained by the right of birth and by God. And these societies, these subject-based societies, tend to be paternalistic, hierarchical, and fixed, with the inherently superior few at the top, he writes. They tell the rest of us what to do, declaring our duties. And for our part, the right thing to do is simply to obey. And in return, we are offered protection and security and the maintenance of order, both physical order and security, as well as psychological. And when the subject story was dominant, it told us that the God-given few knew best. So we did what they said. If we did what they said, we would be protected. And life was as good as could realistically be hoped for. Now, there are many points in that shift away from the subject story. And one of them was on July 4th, 1776. When a group of men signed the Declaration of Independence, a declaration that they would no longer be subjects of the king. And they sought to create something new, a democratic system where the people chose their leaders, and where the people had guaranteed rights, inalienable rights. But some of those same old hierarchies were still in place. Because if it was a government of, by, and for the people, that's only true if you don't consider women's, Africans, indigenous people, and even non-landowners in the very early stages of this country, if you don't consider them people. But over time, this story of rigid hierarchies and humans as subjects begins to crumble in bits and pieces. And people start to embrace freedom and choices. And those who were traditionally excluded from power, women and people of color, seek out their own freedom, their own rights. And so in this context of moving away from being subjects, of having to obey, the shift to a consumer story of getting to choose for ourselves seems to be liberating, right? Offering us a brighter future. But it's a little more complicated than that. And so to illustrate this, I want to share one example. There's countless more, but so smoking, which in the 1800s and early 1900s was considered immoral for women, and in some states was even illegal for women to smoke. And if women did smoke, it was only acceptable for them to do it in the home. Well, the tobacco companies knew they were missing out on a huge potential market. And so the American Tobacco Company hired Edward Bernays, known today as the father of public relations, to encourage women to smoke, particularly in public. And to do that, he sought to take advantage of the feminist movement, which had had a lot of successes and was relatively powerful at the time, and to tie it into that. And so in 1929, he paid a number of women to smoke as they walked in the Easter Sunday parade in New York City, and then hired photographers to take photos of women smoking their torches of freedom, as he called them, and then published those photos around the world. Freedom and equality through consumption, even if it kills you, right? And so in the consumer story, consumption becomes our duty and the way we exercise our power. Remember how in the aftermath of 9/11, we were told by our leaders that it was our patriotic duty to do what? Shop, to buy things, right? That's how we were going to beat the terrorists, to go out and buy things. Now, there's a little bit more than that. And there are places that even involve political engagement. You know, voting in some ways fits into the consumer story. It's about choosing from the options that we are given. And so that's one way we can participate. Not to say that voting is bad. Not all aspects of the consumer story are bad, but they just narrow our sense of possibility of what can be. And so in the consumer story, you know, we're supposed to spend some money to vote, keep your head down generally, and to protect your homestead, you know, to take care of yourself and those closest to you. But now we see that story starting to crumble under its own weight. Economic inequality is at its highest levels in 100 years, and our ecosystems are being pushed to the brink by our overconsumption. And the rich and powerful are building luxury bunkers deep underground and planning to build a floating libertarian paradises in the ocean, right? To avoid the consequences of the actions of what's going on right now. Looking out for themselves. That's the kind of techno-libertarian utopianism that some of us, you know, that our society seems to be heading towards, that many of us want to go towards. And the consumer story tells us that we don't really have much power to change things. And the power we do have is by voting with our dollars, which is, a false power. I mean, that's not to say that we shouldn't still be thoughtful about what we buy, to try to make ethical choices, but to think of our power in those terms alone is inherently limiting our power if that's the way we think about change. And so people are beginning to lose faith in this story. And a lot of people, in response, want to return to the subject story, to give up their freedom in return for the promise of order and protection. And of course, the rigid hierarchies that put certain people at the top. And this subject story becomes even more compelling as the sense of danger and disorder rises, which is why we can see so many people turning to it today. We see the resurgence of fascism. But if you paid attention to the title of the sermon or looking at the screen right now, you may notice that there's a third story. It's the citizen story. Now, the citizen story is not a new story. It's one that already exists. And I want to be clear, citizenship isn't about documentation status or having a passport. When John Alexander talks about being a citizen, it means being an active, engaged member of society. And another person who I think both inspired Alexander and inspired this sermon somewhat was Baratunde Thurston, who has a podcast called How to Citizen. And in it, Baratunde identifies 4 aspects of what it means to be a citizen. To citizen, number 1, to citizen is to participate. Citizen is a verb, not a noun, not an adjective. It's to show up. 2, to citizen is to value the collective and to work toward outcomes that benefit the many and not just the few. 3, to citizen is to understand power and the various ways we have at our disposal to use it. And 4, to citizen is to invest in relationships with others and to recognize our interconnectedness. And of course, that's one of our several of those are key Unitarian Universalist values. Interconnectedness, I think, most prominently so. The idea that we are all in this together and not separate, isolated individuals, and that a greater justice will come from seeing ourselves as that and working towards the good of the whole. Because we are part of the whole, if we are working for the good of the whole, we are working for the good of ourselves too. And we need to change things, and trying to be good within the consumer story is hard. We just don't have that many options. And so that's what I love about the citizen story, is it reminds us of our sense of power. Democracy comes from the Greek word demos, which means people, and kratos, which means power. So democracy literally means people power. Sometimes our democracy may not feel like that, but so maybe we're talking about small d democracy, where we can have more impact in our local communities and think about where to engage that way. And so in order to start shifting our thinking to thinking ourselves as citizens, I think a great question to ask, I don't remember if it was John Alexander or Baratunde Thurston who shared it, but it just stuck with me, which is, what is an idea that's so big that you need other people? What's something that you want to do? What's some change that you want to create that you can't do on your own? I hope you ask yourself that question. Maybe right now, after the service on July 4th, think about what you want to do, what we need in this country, and find people who are willing and excited to work on it. I mean, to a certain extent, that's what church is about. I mean, we have community here where we can work together and try to live out the values and create the world that we want to see. That's what citizenship, that is the future that we need to head towards. Because these times are dicey, friends. And the allure of the subject story in a time of a failing consumer story is enticing, and so we need to embrace that other option. As John Alexander says, we must see ourselves as citizens, as people who actively shape the world around us, who cultivate meaningful connections to their community and institutions, and who can imagine a different and better life, who take care and responsibility, and who create opportunities for others to do the same. And the wonderful thing is that this shift in story is already happening. It's not something that needs to be created or insisted upon or campaigned for, says Alexander. Rather, it's something that needs to be named and nurtured and accelerated. It needs to be revealed not just in ourselves, but in our organizations of all shapes and sizes so that all of us can step into it. This stuff isn't new. Many of our early societies operated under some aspect of this citizen story. Not all early human societies were the subject story. Many of them were citizen stories. And so I think in order for us to help step into it, what would be useful is to kind of understand the differences. And so I want to just share, and I'm going to invite Reverend Kristen and Jeremy up to help me with this. I hope that's big enough for you all to see. So this is a little network. I realize it's probably a little bit small for those of you in the back. And so the great thing about it is y'all can listen. So the way we're going to do this, we're going to divide our space up into 3 different groups. So over here, we're going to have the subjects. And so we'll say the subject part. In the middle, maybe not to the end of that row, because this third section is kind of sparse. So maybe a few of you towards the either side can be citizens, and those in the middle can speak for the consumer part. So I'll speak the subject part. Jeremy will speak the consumer part, and Reverend Kristen will speak the citizen part. And so we'll just go through one line at a time. Dependent. So say this with me. Dependent.
Independent.
So you're going to say this with Jeremy.
Yeah.
Go in the middle. And then I know some of you can't read it. And then again, these people are going to say it with Reverend Kristen. Let's start over from the beginning. Dependent.
Independent.
Interdependent.
2.
4.
With.
Hierarchy.
Bureaucracy.
Network.
Duty.
Rights.
Purpose.
Command.
Serve.
Facilitate.
Receive.
Choose.
Create.
Obey.
Demand.
Participate.
Thank you so much. So each one of these stories is true. Each one of these stories is happening. And so the question I leave with is, which story do you want to live inside of? Which story do you want to act from? Which story do you want to help shape our future with? May you live with that question. I invite you now to rise in body or in spirit and join me in singing our closing hymn, Building a New Way. It's number 1017 in your teal hymnals.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. Hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, this is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without peace, the world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
Now, as we bring our service to a close, I invite you to take up the hand or to touch the shoulder or bump elbows, whatever feels comfortable with you, of your fellow citizen. Reminder that the citizen story is one of connection and interdependence. And so feel that connection. To those of you online, send your energy to us, and we send and to each other as we send it back to you. I close with the words, I leave you with the words of the Reverend Robert Bob Kaufman, who served at Emerson in the late 60s and early 70s. We have come together to share our deepest concerns, speaking and singing words of inspiration and hope. We have committed to do ourselves what we can to ease the burdens of those who suffer, to stand for decency and compassion. We have pledged to work for a more wholesome environment for us and for all of the generations that will follow. But these are just words. The hymns we sing are just songs. All of our reflections are just idle thoughts. When we convert them all into loving and responsible action throughout the week, then, and only then, will this morning become what we want it to be, a time of worship. Amen, Ashe, blessed be. And please join us for our potluck in the kitchen, or in the pavilion. Even if you didn't bring something to share, don't worry, feel free to participate.
Thank you so much, Adam. I appreciate it. So it's interesting. This I